I hope everyone's enjoying the winter weather again, and it's a good opportunity to be inside in a nice warm house and doing some programming. Let's talk about Assignment 12 and what I'm looking for from you. In Assignment 12, we're working with the date, time, object, strings, and cookies. So let me show you what my solution looks like for Assignment 12. How you go about implementing this could be totally different than me, but functionally wise, everybody should basically have the same look and feel. So if I click Remember Me, I create a cookie. I set the value of the cookie to right now, and I set the expiration date to a year from now. If I uncheck this, I delete the cookie by setting the current cookie's expiration date to prior to today, and that automatically deletes it. So let's click this again. We create the cookie. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to CCB website, and then we're going to go back to my page, and what we did when this page loaded is we checked if the cookie existed, and it did. So we read the cookie, we got the value from the cookie, which is when the cookie was created, and then we enabled the checkbox. So if I uncheck this, and then I go to CCB, and then I come back to my website, the checkbox is not checked and the date time is not set because there's no cookie. So basically that's what the completed solution should look like functionality wise. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about cookies and what's really going on here. And I want to go to codepen.io, and in codepen.io I want to see what they're doing here. So I'm going to get all the cookies. Document.cookie gets all the cookies for this particular domain. And then what I want to do is I want to display all the cookies. So what's going on here? All right, so let's look at this line and I'll try and explain what's going on here. So there's a semicolon. There are semicolons, and they're separating their cookies by semicolons. And we see we have 3 cookies. That's one cookie. The value indicator is this, and then after the equal is the value. So this is the cookie name, and then after the equals is the cookie value. So that's a little better of an explanation. So there's 3 cookies, and apparently I'm trying to interpret what these mean, and hoy track must mean they want to track me because the value is true. So they are tracking me. And this must be my unique visitor ID number that uniquely identifies me, and this must be my unique ID visit number. So they're able to track every time I go to the website. They know basically who I am. All right, so that's an example of a cookie. So let's go back to Assignment 12 and look at this from a technical perspective. So I'm going to show you some of my code, and the whole purpose of this is for you to learn, and that's what I really want you to get out of it. One thing I might recommend is to look at this particular website, w3schools.com, JavaScript cookies, and if needed, you can take some code here, but be sure to attribute the source and explain what's going on. So if it would be okay if you took this code right here, get cookie, and it's using strings, it's using while, for loops, it's using here c.substring. So if you use this code, make sure you explain to me what's going on here. But again, you can use some of this code. The purpose is that it's beneficial to you and your learning. Okay, so let's go to my solution here, and let's say, oh yeah, so one last thing, one thing I really wanted to mention is for this to work correctly, you really need to run this on the CCB web server. If you're running it locally, the cookie process really isn't going to work. You really need to run this from the CCB web server. And then I also recommend testing it from from several different browsers. I'm going to use Google Chrome, but I've tested it with IE and it works there too. All right, so how do we know technically that we're saving cookies? One thing I highly recommend is to use Google Chrome developer tools. So I write medical software, and it's all web-based, and I test it in Chrome and IE, but for Chrome, I use Chrome Developer Tools. I'm in there every day, and constantly using Chrome Developer Tools, I would be lost without it. So here's the URL, developer.chrome.com, and this works for the Google Chrome browser. So let's launch the Google Chrome Developer Tools. And we're going to look at this a little bit more the last week of class, but I'm going to do Control-Shift-I. Again, it's Control-Shift-I, and that's going to launch the Google Chrome Developer Tools. And this will allow me to debug my code and actually see what's happening. So I've got two panes. The pane on the left is the output of my web page. The pane on the right is Google Chrome Developer Tools. That pane is grouped into three subpanes. So this pane right here is a tree-like structure. The pane in the middle shows details for whatever I select on the left. And then on the right is my debug navigator, I guess you could say, where I can pause, I can step into, I can step over. And what I recommend is just spend several hours getting used to the debugger. If you want to be a professional web developer, it's highly recommended. So let's click the checkbox. And how do we know a cookie got created? I mean, technically I know, because when I check this, my information goes away. But how do I know a cookie got created? So we can actually see it by going to this menu system and clicking Application. And then from here, go to Storage. From Storage, expand Cookies. And here's my domain. We'll make this a little smaller. Move this over. So here's my domain. And this right here will be all my cookies for the domain. I happen to call, programmatically, I called my cookie. And when I click the checkbox, I set the value of my cookie to right now. Here's my domain, here's the path, and here's when it expires. 4/15 year 2019, which is a year from now. And here's the size. So when I uncheck this, I'm going to delete the cookie. But you notice the cookie didn't go away, and it didn't go away because I have to refresh it. So I refreshed it, I click the checkbox, refresh, my cookie gets created, I uncheck it, I refresh, my cookie gets deleted. So that's what you should be seeing programmatically. Now, if that's not working right, you can debug it. So by debugging it, instead of clicking Application, you click Sources. And then here's my navigation, top, here's my domain, here's my Assignment 12 folder, and then I have two pages, index.html and scripts.js. So I can select the file, and then here's my HTML. So you notice the HTML is really small. I have a div here, which is a label, which is the cookie date time, which is right here. And then I have my Remember Me checkbox, which is this. So really, I only have one event handler wired up for this whole page, which is the checkbox. Every time I click Remember Me, I call handle on click, and I pass it the input element. I pass it this input element. And then I uncheck it, I call it again. So that's the HTML, and that's what the completed solution would look like. So again, the purpose of this is for you to learn. So I'm going to show you some of my source code, but again, I want you to learn from this. So let's click Script. So here's all my JavaScript. And there's actually a lot of JavaScript for not doing much. So what I want to do is I want to set a breakpoint. So if I go back to index.html, I'm going to call handle on click. So I'll go to scripts.js and JS. Here's my event handler, and I'm going to click right at the number 13, and that's going to set a breakpoint. So now, okay, so I just set a breakpoint. So now let's click this and figure out what's happening. Okay, so I click the checkbox, and my code now just stepped into my handle on click event handler. So this is my input element. So if I hover over it, I see all the properties and methods for that input element. The current value is checked. So see, element.checked is true. So this is checked. So since it's checked, and then I want to step into the next breakpoint. So I can step over or I can step into. I'm going to step over. So it's going to get the current date and time. So here's my current date and time, and I'm displaying it by hovering over. If I wanted to set a watch point, I could select that. I could expand watch, click the plus, and add a watch. So that's a couple different ways you can see the values. So now I'm going to step over again. So now it's going to set the cookie date to a year from now. So now the cookie date will be 1 year from today. And then I'm going to create the cookie. The cookie name, so this is my cookie name, and the value is going to be a year from now. And the expiration date, the cookie value will be today. The expiration date will be a year from now, and my path is just a slash. And then I'm going to step into this function called display cookie. Oh, and I didn't step into it because notice I stepped over. I needed to have clicked this down arrow, and that would have stepped into the code to display the cookie. But that's a way how to debug it if you're having problems. So that's it. If you have any questions, let me know.